Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have an engineering panel that we have lined up for you. It consists of Nida Farid, who's the moderator, Jeremy Higgs, Sophia Hasnain, and Nabeel Siddiqui. And what they are going to be talking about is, well, it's an engineering panel, and they're ready. If they're ready, we're going to move on to them, and we'll have them online with us very, very shortly. Meanwhile, let me remind you very quickly that you can tweet about our series of events with 021Disrupt 2020. Use that as a hashtag. Get in on the conversation. Talk to us. We are talking about it on a human level, on a business level. We're talking about it on a very relatable level. And it was good to have somebody in the studio, actually. And I just realized how much we miss that personal interaction and the questions that come out. But I'm glad that you guys have joined us online. Our panel is ready right about now. So without any further delay, it's only the best thing for me to do to move on to them.
One more. Perfect. Okay, is everyone's mics working? Can you hear me? Perfect. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I want to thank the Nest.io, Jahan, and the entire team for giving us engineering startups a session in this conference this year. As Sophia mentioned to us before, engineering startups are, in reality, the first kind of entrepreneurs, honestly speaking. We've been inventing things since basically fire and the wheel. So, but over the last couple of decades, the focus in entrepreneurship has shifted a little more towards IT startups. So it's good to have more attention come back to our sector again. Because of that, we are hoping that with this session today, we can inspire some of the younger ones of you to join engineering. And we hope that others who have already done engineering, we can inspire you to have your own startups, build your products, innovate, and help solve some of the problems here in Pakistan and across the world. So I'm going to first of all start with understanding the journey of everyone here who is present. I think it's important for a lot of our viewers to understand that most of us are not doing right now what we thought we would be doing 20 years ago whenever we started university, right? So we have our own different journeys. We work in different fields, we have different sectors, but we have had a long journey to the point that we are right now. And so I want to ask all of you panelists today to share in 1 minute the journey that has got you to the point here that we are right now. So I'm going to start with Sophia. She's been struggling with engineering startups the longest, so I want to really hear her story here. Sophia? Sophia, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Thank you, Nida, for giving this opportunity, Disrupt, for giving this opportunity to talk about our journey. I'm Sophia Hasnain, as Nida just mentioned. I am a computer systems engineer and an electrical engineer, and second-time entrepreneur. Right now, I'm running an organization called Link Things, which is IoT as a service provider. I had started an embedded systems design company back in 2002 as well, which I quickly shut down because technology wasn't ready to to scale to a level. And after that, I joined corporate sector, worked for telcos here, worked for SIs, went outside Pakistan, came back, went again, came back. And in 2015, when there was a lot of hype on IoT, I decided to look into this because my background was in embedded systems and I wanted to check how much the technology has progressed while I was doing all marketing, strategy, products, and all that. So, believe it or not, I started this in a very small place. I rented a place from .0, 2 desks, and hired 2 engineers and told them to do it. And our first prototype was ready in 3 weeks. That really excited me and got me addicted. And believe it or not, I'm not willing to let go even after 5 years.
Okay. Salman, tell us a little bit more about your journey to today, I guess.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Nida, and thank you 021Disrupt for having me on this illustrious panel. I grew up in Pakistan, but left Pakistan about 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, and have been involved in various startups in the US and in the UK over the last 30 years. My current venture is a company that has brought me back to Pakistan. Empirici is an AI and advanced analytics company that focuses on the industrial sector. Our primary audience are process engineers and performance engineers. More than 1/3 of the company is chemical engineers and industrial engineers and electrical and mechanical engineers that have worked in plants, in industrial plants. And what we're trying to do is leverage IIoT to develop solutions that process engineers in a plant can leverage to make their plants perform better, reduce the costs of their operations, reduce the cost of fuel, to bring about the next generation of productivity and efficiency in an industrial plant environment. This is the first time that I have worked in Pakistan, and the company is wholly sponsored by a Pakistani company, Daud Hercules Corporation, which is an investment firm interested in technology services businesses and is committed to developing local talent, in technology. It's been a very interesting journey being back in Pakistan, still with one leg in the UK. But I'd love to share more about my experiences as we go along. Thank you.
Jeremy, tell us a little bit about your journey, because you've actually left Australia to come to Pakistan and do amazing things here. So we really want to hear that journey.
Sure. So I have a background in software engineering. I studied at UNSW, and I think wrongly at that point in time, I thought that I didn't want to sit behind a computer all the time and do programming. So I decided to branch out. How wrong I was, actually. So branched out and started doing some work around NGO management. I ended up coming to Pakistan on that basis, working here for about 4 years with 2 NGOs. And then in the process got involved and with my co-founder started Eco Energy, which we're still running. And that's very much in the sort of hardware and access to energy space. But strangely enough, the engineering background and I think the approach to problem solving has come in very, very handy, because I think like most businesses these days, it's very much tech enabled. But it's also kind of given me the approach, that engineering background has given me the approach of problem solving, figuring out how to disassemble a problem, figure out the cause, and then maybe figure out a better solution or a more efficient solution to it.
Nabeel, how about your journey? Nabeel, you're on mute.
My bad. Hi, thanks for having me, Nida. So my journey started back in 2016 when I was just graduating from university. And what we saw was a social problem that we were very inclined to solve. And that's when we thought, all right, we must pursue this. So the journey started, we started with our incubation process at the Nest, and that has been a very learning process and full of new experiences. And that's been quite exciting for us, and we've been able to scale the business and learn a lot of new things along the way.
Mehak?
Thank you, Nida. It's great to be here. My name is Mehak. I'm a life scientist by background, not an engineer. I studied biochemistry at Oxford. I thought I wanted to be an academic. I did a PhD, as you often do if you're studying science. But I soon realized that most academic discoveries never really make it to the market. And that was something that was quite disappointing for me because I had very different views of what it's going to be like as an academic. I then sort of just stumbled upon innovation entrepreneurship through some programs that I participated in during my PhD. And I found this space at the intersection of tech, healthcare, and commercialization incredibly exciting. And I think what was even more exciting for me was that I could really see it moving the needle for patients in a more immediate manner. And that's really what's always driven me. I then got accepted to this healthcare venture builder accelerator program. And through that, I met my co-founders. We had this technology which had been developed in the lab, we found an application for it, and then we subsequently raised a seed round, which then really kickstarted the company. And so what we're doing now is using photonics and AI to accelerate drug discovery for complex heterogeneous diseases. And our mission really is to be able to bring drugs for currently incurable diseases to the market. And it's really been a fantastic journey so far.
Perfect. Okay, Ammar?
Thank you, Nida. Thank you to the Nest team and the 021Disrupt platform for this opportunity to share our stories. My name is Ammar. I'm a chemical mechanical engineer. I've spent 12 years in the US, went there for my undergrad, and stuck around, worked in various sectors from renewable energy to nanotechnology, and then landed into the IoT space. And I moved back to Pakistan 3 years ago and wanted to sort of focus on purpose-driven ventures and bring best practices from a technology standpoint into Pakistan. And obviously, from all the problems, the one that was very evident to me was water. So I became, really passionate about looking at solving water crisis in Pakistan and countries like Pakistan. So so we launched My Water, which develops smart water treatment systems. And when I say smart, it's not just IoT based, but smart in the sense where you have to create scalable systems and stuff that can be manufactured locally and stuff that is accessible to various urban rural parts. My journey has been really great. We developed 90% of the technology in Pakistan with engineers in Pakistan. So yes, there were best practices I brought in from my network abroad, but solely it was very interesting to develop a technology that could be scaled up globally, and most of it was developed here in Pakistan with the real engineers. Just with some direction and focus, it can you can really develop really good technologies that can compete on a global scale. So very excited to work out of Pakistan.
Okay, so as engineers, our main goal really is to solve problems. And technically speaking, all startups should have that goal to solve a problem or a pressing need that our potential users have. So I want to understand, out of the hundreds of problems that we could solve here in Pakistan, why did you choose the problems that you wanted to focus on here? And what do you think would be the scope of impact of these products that you are working on, and how do you think they will make a social impact here? And I think what's really important to understand is, yes, out of all the distractions we have and all of the things we can solve, why that particular problem? So let's start off with Jeremy.
Sure. So I mean, our approach was this that our approach to this was that energy is one of the fundamental requirements for a productive society. That you know, whether if you're living in a village and you don't have access to electricity, life shuts down at sunset. But if you're living in a city, you're running your own business, you're running a factory, or you're just living in a home, if you have unreliable electricity, or you don't have electricity because there's, you know, an outage or it's really expensive, that affects like how much energy you're going to use and how productive your business will be. So that's the problem that we set out to solve back in 2010, and then we started our operations in 2013 to really figure out, you know, how to get affordable and reliable energy access across the country. And I mean, I'm really thankful that, you know, over the course of that, well, how long has it been now? 7 years of kind of full operations, you know, we've sold over 23,000 products to mainly to unelectrified communities across the country. And then in the past year, we've deployed around 700 kilowatts in urban and peri-urban areas alone. So, you know, we know that there's a huge appetite out there, and we're getting a lot of feedback from the market on the kind of products that we're selling, the kind of solutions that we're providing, and we're seeing that impact that it's having on us in terms of socio and economic terms.
Ammar.
Yeah. So you know, just like Jeremy said, you know, like energy, the other spectrum is water, and you know, clean water is a, you know, that's a problem in Pakistan and a lot of countries like Pakistan. And but you know, technologies exist. There are filtration types, there are different kinds of technologies that exist. It's been decades. They're used all over the world in different packaged systems. But to the problem in countries, you know, like Pakistan and are of distribution. It's not of technology, and it's about how to scale from, you know, from sort of in an inbound way, rather than just rely on importing, you know, things from abroad and just sort of, you know, creating a PR stunt out of it. But and the solutions have to be very simple, has to be very affordable. Obviously there's a market, right? Your problems, the problems are one thing, but the way you solve a problem sustainably is by creating a product that somebody would buy, whatever segment they belong in. And that's what you have to focus on as, you know, and engineering companies, is creating the right, you know, creating a product that somebody would buy. It doesn't matter if he's, you know, if he's an industrialist or if he's a, you know, a farmer living in a very rural part of the country. Everyone is wants to buy things, and you just have to create that value to them, you know.
Nabeel.
Yeah, I'm going to further elaborate on Maslow's theory. So both Jeremy and Ammar are working on very basic problems, and likewise we're working on housing, which is even more basic. Providing shelter is a basic human necessity. And unfortunately, we saw that in Pakistan, over 10 million housing units are lacking, right? And this is not just a problem in Pakistan, it's all over the world. We're lacking 1.6 billion people today lack adequate housing. And we saw this as a huge scalable problem, a huge scale problem that we could solve with better technology and better distribution, like Ammar mentioned. So what we saw at that time was that we could create technology that could be more scalable in this sense, and which this sector has not seen yet. And how we can couple that with our own expertise. So my background in civil engineering helped us a lot. And that's how we started catering to the problem. But more than anything else, it's what you really care about. And we really felt for refugees and displaced communities. My team in general, we felt a lot about sustainability. And that's how we created our products, so that they could be scalable, create the maximum social and environmental impact. And when we're talking about problems in Pakistan, there's so many, but then there are so many opportunities as well. For example, our low cost of manufacturing, if we do manage to manufacture in Pakistan, there's a huge export potential for our products, and we're especially competitive in more developed countries. So there are a lot of opportunities there as well.
Okay. Yeah, I remember, I think you guys did your product when there was a refugee crisis going on in Pakistan too. We had a lot of displaced people in the northwest of the country. Sophia, what about why exactly are you doing what you're doing?
Okay, so I'm doing it for the love of engineering. I don't have altruistic goals like these guys have, because you have to think, in context that after, creating PowerPoints and Excel sheets for 12 years, I decided to, build something, and it was very exciting actually as an engineer. It helped me to, look at the technical problems and rolling out IoT in a country where you don't have reliable internet and you don't have electricity and power. So how do you actually roll out IoT here, and what engineering skills we can use? And also set up something like, that you get response in 400 milliseconds from, you at most. So these are I think I'm more concerned about engineering problems than trying to solve social problems. And that came later, actually, like, when we were preparing our pitch deck and all, and we said, oh, we need, this social side of things and impact and all that. But I mean, I started it as a business venture, as something that is fulfilling for myself, first, because I saw an opportunity. I saw something where I can, my skills, my experiences, all could contribute. So, I'm not one of those people who thought of a particular problem, but obviously I think whatever we have built over the years, we got a lot of demand, and we could develop products very quickly. So now I think our turnaround time for any product is 6 weeks. We can provide IoT services in a country which has unreliable internet, unreliable power, unskilled people, very little, awareness about technology and adoption. So like, that kind of thing that we do. In all the 4 verticals where we work, be that industry, agriculture, smart cities, or enterprise sector, they all need energy conservation. They all need to optimize their operations. They all need to become profitable. Those businesses have to become profitable using our technology.
Salman, what about empiric AI? Why is it doing what it is doing?
Hi, Nida. I think carrying on a little bit with Sophia's comments, I was personally excited about the coming together of AI and IIoT as a very significant innovation wave that could impact the world literally, because industry is at the heart of what's produced and what we consume. Manufacturing, these manufacturing plants, manufacturing is a sector I'd never worked in, and when I understood manufacturing and went and visited a number of plants, and I saw how much data these plants had that had been there for years and years, thousands and thousands of sensors churning out exact conditions and states of every little aspect of a plant. But none of that data was really being used, or it was being used in a very reactive mode to troubleshoot when something went wrong. And more than that, most of these plants were using very basic tools such as Excel, literally, to analyze data. And we are talking about thousands and thousands of rows and data that's being produced, as Sophia said, literally every second or every minute. And so, having worked mostly in the financial services sector and the tech sectors, I was amazed as to how much of a laggard the manufacturing sector was, in particular the chemical process industries, in adopting what I considered to be, mainstream technologies, and not even 21st century technologies, but perhaps 20th century technologies. So I didn't start out with this mission, but bringing the manufacturing sector into the 21st century has become a motivation for myself and the company. And we are leveraging AI, IIoT, analytics, really to give plants the tools that will help them to make a difference in improving performance, reliability, safety, efficiency, productivity, but also to reduce wastage and also to consume less. So that's kind of why we're in it, is to really make a difference and hopefully be successful as an organization as well.
Okay. It's really cool because that's one of the problems that I was really interested in as well. And I thought that would be something that I will do later on here as well. So it's always actually good to find someone else solving the problems, because then you can focus your attention on something else, right? Mehak, what about you guys? Why are you focusing on what you are focusing?
Sure. So for us, it's actually sort of quite a common problem that scientists usually face when they're spinning out a company, usually from university. So we had this technology platform. It had shown incredible potential. We knew what we could do with it, detect molecules in blood, but we had to find an application for it, which would not only be technically feasible, but also would have a large commercial potential and would be something that we would all be aligned with in terms of our personal motivation. So I mentioned that we were this part of this accelerator program for brain health. So through that, what we did was very methodically, we narrowed down a few applications, disease areas, and then we just went out. So a typical needs discovery and validation process. And what we found was that in brain health, dementia is one of the biggest problems, one of the highest sort of social and economic burden, but at the same time, we don't really have a drug for any of the dementias, but especially Alzheimer's disease in the market. We then also, kind of figured out how we could make the process, this drug discovery process, more efficient. We found a few companies, a few pharma companies that were willing to back us. And really, I think for our investors, that's what did it for them. So, when your customers, potential buyers, are really describing the need and putting their names together on a piece of paper, that's really one of the best validations that you can have. And in terms of sort of, economic and social impact, it's quite easy to justify that, as we're supporting, these companies directly who are developing these drugs for a disease that currently has no cure. So it's kind of, really obvious, and it's all sort of aligned with what we all wanted to do as well.
We keep on getting comments in our feed about how this panel is extremely inspirational for everyone. So I'm really excited to discuss the kind of work you guys are all doing. While we do this work, and especially for us startups that are in Pakistan, we face a lot of challenges, and I mean a lot of challenges, especially due to bureaucracy. In my case, as an engineering services startup, we have double taxation due to provincial taxes and federal withholding tax as well. 8 years ago, 7 years ago, we had a 7% excise duty. Now we pay 13% services tax and we pay 10% withholding. So basically our taxation has more than tripled over the last 8 years. So what kind of challenges have you been facing here in Pakistan as an engineering startups? What would you like to highlight here through this session? And after this question, we'll talk a little bit about what kind of solutions we have for that as well. But I will start off with Nabeel.
There are definitely a lot of challenges of working in Pakistan in terms of ease of doing business. Getting money into the country is very difficult, especially if you're getting a grant. You have to sign an MOU with the Economic Affairs Division, which takes months sometimes, and a lot of startups, their payments are returned multiple times. Similarly, getting money out of the country is impossible. A lot of paperwork. If you want to import something small, that's very difficult because you're not going to open an LC for everything. So a lot of things like that. And why is this so important for startups is because as startups, we have to follow regulations and compliances much better than most companies, where most companies do find other ways around these things. But especially if you're foreign funded and are working with larger organizations, your policies and compliances and controls need to be there. And the government needs to step up and really make things better. And in some cases, the government has developed better policies, especially for the IT sector, but I don't see as many improvements for the SMEs and manufacturing industries in Pakistan. So that's something I would like to see.
Okay. Sophia?
So I think every day there is a new challenge, and sometimes those challenges keep repeating when you are doing a business in Pakistan. I think the biggest challenge is about the awareness, as Salman also highlighted that we are dealing with laggards, and it is extremely difficult to roll out a 21st century a product or service here and make people understand. I'll exactly as you started this, that the blurb about our session that went out initially said that engineering is a new discipline for innovation and entrepreneurs coming in, and if someone like here who is at the cusp of entrepreneurship and promoting innovation is talking about this, so there is really a gap on the awareness side, and it's so prevalent in this country that almost every 3 months I decide to quit, but the next day the excitement of doing things actually bring me back to the business. I'll give you another example. Like I was pitching a solution to one of the largest ISPs for their remote site monitoring, for energy monitoring, for equipment monitoring and all that using IoT. And when I met the operations manager, he told me how they manage and how many people they have and how many windows they can open on a screen and look at different equipment remotely using SNMP, which is 1980s technology, and they also have a person who can scroll up and down and see when something goes wrong. And on my way back, I was like, I'm in a wrong country, altogether in a wrong country when I am trying to sell IoT to the largest ISP. All our internet backbone runs on them, and they are telling me that they can live without doing remote monitoring, without adopting any new technology. So that's the biggest challenge that we have. The second challenge is that the talent. I mean, forget government. I don't want this government to get involved in anything, because whatever they touch turns into dust. But the talent that we get, is absolutely horrible. I mean, we haven't been able to inculcate creativity, risk taking, all of these things that you need as an out of the box venture, which is not like, I'm not selling fashion goods, I'm not selling food, I'm not selling this. So I think that is a challenge. Technology, so awareness, talent. And I think my particular challenge has been that when I go and talk to the customers, or even general public, nobody expects a woman to be talking about 21st century women technology. So what they say is like, as a woman, why aren't you in e-commerce? Why aren't you doing food delivery, fashion, education, health, and what are you doing on plant side? I travel from site to Port Qasim to Kimari to Kurangi and all these areas, and the first reaction that I face is this, that they don't accept me. So there are a couple of challenges here. And I mean, Nabeel has all rightly said, ease of doing business is horrible. As a startup, we have to comply to a lot of things to protect the small setup that we have, but a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I know the challenges of working as a woman here, but I must admit this is there all over the world. By the way, Europe has it worse, honestly speaking, because there were just 1% women in my engineering department in Switzerland. So, Jeremy, let's. Oh, before that part, I will debate one of the questions, one of the responses you gave about this being the wrong country, because I feel as entrepreneurs this is the right country because there's so much to do, so there's no lack of opportunities and potential for us to be working on here. Jeremy, let's hear about your challenges. Yeah.
I said we
Sophia,
can
I'll
take
go
this
on to
discussion.
Jeremy's part now.
Go for it, Sophia.
Jeremy, let's hear about your challenges, and especially also as a non-Pakistani. What are the challenges you felt when working here and dealing with administrative and bureaucratic and other challenges and cultural challenges here?
Sure. I mean, not being from Pakistan, I think one of the issues that sort of people working here, non-Pakistanis working here face is around visas. It's a very laborious process, but I think that's fairly niche. Maybe my circumstance is a little different from most, and you don't get a lot of foreigners coming to Pakistan and kind of setting up shop here. But yeah, it has been a big difficulty over the years, and thankfully now it's resolved. But the other big challenge that we face just quickly is around taxes. It was mentioned that, I think you both mentioned that taxes become a problem, you have service tax, etc. But the impact of that is that we become uncompetitive on the market. In a price-sensitive market, it makes us uncompetitive because if we're competing with a local market vendor on who deals only with cash, their product is going to be significantly cheaper than ours. And then the other companies that we may be bidding against for a particular deal, they're also figuring out how, maybe they're keeping a cash book and a digital book, and they're figuring out how to evade the taxes. So it's very difficult in that situation to compete. And well, it forces us to be inventive and to figure out, well, what else can we provide you? Do we focus on the after-sales service? Do we focus on the quality, etc.? But it would be nice not to have to, to have a more equal playing field there.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the challenges part here, but let's also talk about the challenges of scaling up. Okay, what's keeping us back as entrepreneurs from getting our products out there, getting them, getting a market that's actually interested in them, even understanding, do we have a market for our product, right? So what are the challenges we are facing at that level, and what are the solutions from it? And from the solution part of view, and even maybe from a critical point of view of the way we are doing things here, I want Mehak and Salman's answers on that. But I think Sophia definitely had views on why we are not scaling up and what challenges we are finding in materializing our ideas. So I'll start off with Sophia for that, but then I want Mehak and Salman's view on what do we need to do to stop getting things wrong. Okay.
So I think generally the society, the businesses and everything is in the 19th or the 20th century technology. And I think most processes just require, if we talk about automation and all, most processes generally require an Excel sheet, and that's being used there. So when we look at the opportunity, as I told you earlier on as well, I drive from site to Port Qasim and to Korangi and Lanti and all these industrial areas, and even from our agricultural deployments to Badin, to Mirpur Khas, to Soabi, Abtabad, whatever, wherever our devices are, we see huge opportunity of automating things, of improving things. Like in the fintech industry, there is an opportunity to leapfrog and implement latest technology, get rid of all the archaic processes or practices, and bring new technology. And it will be much cheaper to do that than probably invest in Europe or US in terms of cost of doing that. It's not a lot, and with our technology we have developed something like with minimal internet power backups and all that, how you can actually keep the systems alive. So opportunity side, if I look at it just from what can be done, it's huge. But as a businesswoman, when I look at the opportunity, what can be materialized, it completely becomes zero, right? It's just because how our businesses are used to working on. I'm not just talking about industries, I'm talking about banks, I'm talking about our potential customers who have pockets, deep pockets to pay us. They themselves haven't done the digital transformation. So, IoT, AI, all these nice things that we are talking about are needed in a business environment, in an industrial environment, in an agricultural environment where there is a need for digital transformation. The organizations haven't really done the internal digital transformation. So their procurement processes are archaic, right? And they want you to submit your 3-year financial statement, your income tax returns and all that just to pass through that, right? And even then, one of their cousins would come and take the project, right? So, we still are very tribal in whom we will give the business to. The criteria for evaluating our companies are archaic. So the businesses take long time. I found some hope in going directly to the industries because which I found is much simpler in the decision making process, because you go to the state and if you can convince them, you get this. But even then, when we go to implement this on the plant level, and Salman would know, working with plant managers and all that, we are actually entering their Chaudhry or Chaudhry level and disrupting that, and that is difficult, right? So even when we do the first project with them, the second takes a lot of time, because then you have to actually not just convince this, fight the internal politics in the organization. So I think the biggest challenge in materializing the opportunities is the digital transformation that has to happen within the organizations, the mindset, the economy and everything. So, I mean, as long as everything can work on Excel sheet, they'll continue to do that.
Jeremy, you had, when we were talking about this before, you had talked about the problems and challenges of sales and distribution for products. Can you touch a little bit on that before I get to Mehak and Salman?
Sure. So we started off as a sales and distribution company, selling someone else's hardware products. And we actually chose, I think, one of the hardest sort of distribution problems in terms of going to unelectrified villages in rural Sims, people that don't have a lot of money, that are really far and really expensive to reach. But I think as well, we've also learned about how important it is to have sales and distribution with a hardware product. Obviously, actually, it's not just sales and distribution, it's also marketing. Because you can create a product, you can create the most fantastic product, but if people aren't finding out about it, they don't have a way to get that, whether it's from a website or whether it's someone standing at their door and presenting it to them and trying to sell them on it, that product won't sell, and you're not going to reap the rewards from the product or the service that you've developed. So I am a proponent of the marketing, sales, and distribution are really, really important for any kind of engineering or hardware startup. And now kind of where we're actually developing some products and platforms of our own. So we realize that if we can develop this, we can tweak it in the lab, but until we actually get it out there and figure out how to sell it, who to sell it to, it's just it's an idea, it's a concept that's not actually going to achieve the objective that we want.
Mehak, what do you think we are doing wrong? Do you think we just design for the sake of designing and not actually make products that people want? Or what do you think the engineering startups are getting wrong in Pakistan?
So, Nida, I can speak from my experience of what we found really beneficial, both sort of from a company perspective, but also on a personal level. We strongly believe, disruptive innovation comes at the intersection of different fields. And that's where you see universities and research centers playing a really important role. And for us, developing a technology which is quite cutting edge, it sort of spans multiple fields. You have life sciences, AI, photonics, software. So the way that it really started off was actually a physicist speaking to a clinician to figure out what problem we could potentially solve using a technology that had actually been built in the lab just for the sake of building a technology. So that's really been sort of the thread throughout for us, being able to collaborate with different people, in a university setting or outside, being able to share ideas and have access to all of this expertise. And I think there's really sort of a lot of opportunity in Pakistan to be able to bring and build these cross-disciplinary centers where you can perhaps sort of adopt the same model. And I think the other thing that universities are, great at is something that Sophia also mentioned. It's allowing people the creative freedom to be able to explore ideas and experience what it's like to be an entrepreneur. For me, my university played a really important part as part of my journey as a founder. I found out about entrepreneurship through various activities. I met all of these people from various different backgrounds and worked with them, different ideas, and just sort of experienced what it's like to be able to, take risks and, build something from the ground up. I feel like now universities in Europe are catching on to this. In Europe also, there's a bit of a lag compared to the US. And I think increasingly what we're seeing is sort of through that earlier access, there are more people who are coming out with, this desire to look at entrepreneurship as a viable career option. Something that, I think universities in Pakistan are also catching up to, but there's, I feel like, a lot that we can learn through other places in outside the world.
Salman, what do you think that we as engineering startups can learn from more established companies? What do you think we are doing wrong, and why do you think it's harder for us to succeed here?
Yeah, I think, Nida, I would echo some of the comments made already, around talent and around true innovation, being driven by cross-disciplinary teams. For us, the biggest challenge was and remains finding experienced talent. It was something, again, that I was surprised about working in Pakistan. And then, I realized there were not a lot of, this is just really a reflection of where the tech entrepreneurship is in Pakistan, in, not just hardware, but in software as well. There aren't a lot of companies that have gone through this cycle enough times to produce people who can mentor others in the mistakes that they have made. So we're just at an early stage. And while there's no dearth of really smart, intelligent, and hardworking people in Pakistan, it's a struggle to find people who've done it before, which is a growth limiting factor for businesses in Pakistan. And I think complicated, what further complicates that is something that Sophia, talked about, is that Pakistani customers, and I have the basis for comparison, to customers outside Pakistan. Pakistani customers are not very demanding. There is insufficient competition, and labor costs are so low that while some of these things are, can definitely be positives, they actually help to inhibit innovation and digitization and adoption of technology as well, because why innovate when you have access to armies of cheap labor? If you don't have competition, there's less of a driver to innovate, and if you're not very demanding as a customer in quality or in innovation, then the market for generating those ideas just falters away. So I think this is a sign of where we are as a country, and I certainly do think that there's a lot that can be done by people that are coming back to Pakistan, as a lot of people in this panel, to bring their experiences back, to mentor young people who have the passion and the drive to solve problems that are very much there in our country. Other ways, that we can help this is, people talked about taxation. You talked about double taxation. One of the ways in which the UK government is helping startups here in the UK is by setting up schemes through which individuals and businesses can invest in early stage startups and get very significant tax relief, both on their investment as well as on their losses. So effectively makes it very easy for individuals to invest, up to £1 million, and companies to raise £1 million, because the investors that are investing those are really taking a very minor risk because they can offset those investments against losses and against their own income tax. So those kinds of things will help give more impetus and momentum behind this ecosystem that of which universities and students are very much a part of it. Customers at the corporate sector and enterprise level are very much a part of it, and government definitely has a role to play in policy making to facilitate it.
Ammar, we've talked about the challenges, etc. Let's talk about scaling up all of this. Do you think engineering companies, especially product companies, definitely need investment? Can they grow organically, or they do need investment to grow? And if that is the case, do you think it's harder for engineering companies to get investment in Pakistan compared to a lot of the IT companies that we've seen?
So and this has been a decades long war between software and hardware startups. But as these decades have as the years have gone by, and I'm sure all of you agree that the hardware and software synchronization has sort of come closer and closer. So to the point where an IoT solution does not work if the software and hardware don't have a perfect harmony, to the point where so that's where it's so intertwined now that you have software solutions that could be created with minimal investment. A brilliant software engineer, a desk at home or a basement, a basement startup thought process. But engineering hardware startups, especially in Pakistan, have to go through that whole life cycle of even developing a product. You come up with an idea, you want to test it. You have to, after you've designed something in your head, you have to test it and make sure that the market will pay for it. And to go through these beta testing, I call it, there is investment needed, right? It could be an investment in setting up. I mean, you don't have to buy a factory and start, but still the investment is required for beta testing and coming to a product where you could scale and sell. Whereas software, yes, you have developed something, but you can instantly beta test it with minimal effort. So that's the difference I see in IT related startups and purely hardware products. And also because just to kind of have a few words around the fact that industry, policymakers, government also play a role, because it's not easy to create an industrial base which can support hardware startups by creating prototypes, by engineering solutions, or making 1,000 electronic boards by in a quality which could be scaled up. So I mean, there are these different things that the government and policymakers also have to chip in. Like for example, I know that China didn't become a industrial nation overnight. There was decades worth of investment and planning that went in to make this happen. And there were certain things, like if you are a startup, if you need to set up a small manufacturing facility, there could be options as a grant or a loan with terms that are obviously easy for you to kind of take that loan and scale. But if you're gonna apply for a small business loan and somebody asks you for collateral more than the loan you want, which is the case I've seen in Pakistan, so that becomes a challenge for especially hardware startups to scale in terms of investment. So then you have to rely on private investment, and private investment also they also have an agenda. They're not just shelter out money. They're not a charity. Everybody wants returns. So you have to when you shift to private investment, even private investors in Pakistan have to realize that there is a certain amount of risk in hardware startups that they have to take. So
I think to wrap up the session, because we have 7 minutes left, I want to understand, as engineers and people working with engineering companies, what problems do you think still need to be solved in Pakistan? What problems do you want other engineers to be working on? What products do you want to see out there? So we leave this session inspiring other people to, have their own startups. Nabeel, let's start with you.
I would just say that follow an idea that you really love. And something that I ask most founders who are starting new companies is that, what are you going to do if in 2 years things don't go according to plan and you don't make any money? What are you going to do? Are you going to stick with this idea? And if the answer is yes, you will, then you should pursue this idea, because doing a startup is incredibly difficult and it's not that as easy as it looks. And there are a lot of things that you'll find boring, and there's just a lot to do. So just pursue something you really believe in. That's what I'm doing.
Sophia, what product do you want to see out there? What problems do you want to see Pakistani engineers working on?
So I think that as we live in a country where, there are problems and problems and every problem can be solved, I think that's my belief through good engineering products. Whatever I think they want to do, they should have a product mindset. I have seen prototypes out there, which they also call MVP, but that's not. I think the prototype has to have a certain look and feel and usability aspect built into this, and focus on building a product. I think your product is not your final year project. So you have to make it look attractive, usable, deployable, and it continues to run, because as Ammar also said that it's a long-term thing than just a software project, and doing updates on hardware is difficult, the design and all. So when you are building something, it's to all the new entrants in hardware, build a robust product. Do search on the, even if it's a power meter, look at how power meters are done across the world, what kind of material is used as a casing, what kind of protection is built in this, how would you make it run for 1 year without service, at least, right? So these are the things that you have to build in your product before you actually go out. And please remember, your final year project is not your product.
Jeremy, what about you? I think especially in your case, because you are technically an EPC company, right? Engineering procurement company. So you use products a lot.
Yep.
And I'm sure you've identified things you would like to see out there that you would like to sell, right? So that you think your customers need. So what do you think your customers need that's not out there yet in Pakistan?
Yeah, so actually the kind of the problem or the solution that I'd like to see is actually not related to kind of our business in terms of as an EPC, but more related to some of the products and platforms that we're developing and how difficult it's been. And Ammar mentioned this briefly, that it's very, we don't have the manufacturing capacity here in Pakistan. So, we were, we had a team in the lab who were kind of hand assembling circuit boards, winding wire, and it just took forever. And we ended up finding a vendor in China to assemble them pretty much not automatically, but in a lot more optimized manner, and then bring it into Pakistan. So I would really like to see, can someone build that production or that manufacturing infrastructure in Pakistan, so that we can say to them, this is exactly what we need built. We want this kind of casing, plastic and injection molds, etc. We need a certain level of waterproofing, and we need 10 of these, or 500 of these, or 1,000 of these. When can you deliver them to us? And for someone to provide that engineering infrastructure to all of these hardware startups, so that it's easier for us to build these kinds of products without having to set up entire lab or production facility in-house.
Ammar, what about you?
I would, like basic things to get solved. Obviously, like things that are kind of preventing Pakistan from taking the next step. The similar step that our neighbors have taken, and just sort of work on problems, and just create value for a customer. A customer, if it's a doesn't matter if it's a corporate, if it's a consumer, as long as you create value for them for what they can pay you X amount, and sort of you communicate the value to that customer, just sort of focus on that concept, and you will build a great startup. No matter what you're doing, it doesn't have to be an engineering, space science. It can be as simple as a bakery. So startups in its sense is an engineered product. It's a problem, you design a solution and you deploy it and you scale. And so just focus on that engineering mindset, and you could do any startup, doesn't matter, just create value for your customer.
Okay, well, thank you guys. Thank you for coming and talking about your startups and the work you do here. And I am sure for inspiring a lot of our audience that has not taken engineering seriously before this. I hope we have inspired some of the younger audience members to think about engineering as a field. And we are going to wrap up now. It's time for the other session. Thank you, Nest.io again, and thank you, everyone. Let's
Thank you.
see you in
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.